Should have audio now. How about that, Joe? I didn't realize it was already streaming. I clicked on a button and it kept giving me saying the output setting was invalid or something. So I clicked that off, and then I realized it actually was streaming anyway, so I don't know what it was asking about. So it shows I have audio on the bar there. I think it shows a lot of gain, so it should be good. Might still have the compressor on there. So, hey, just thought I'd do a quick stream tonight. I got a couple things here, some folders to do some show and tell and everything. Maybe one of the first things I should show you guys is this. Popped up in some, social media advertising. So we're going to go in here and I'm going to send it over. So you just go in here, continue on PC. Find my computer here. It should just pop up right there. I'm glad that Microsoft and Samsung are playing nicely together nowadays, right? So, okay. So I hope you guys don't hear the yelling going downstairs between the kids and grandkid and everything down there. But anyway, check this out. This thing is from, well, it's always a weird random website name. So this time it's like igeekdeal.com. It's better than a lot of the ones that you see on Facebook and whatnot that have just random gibberish for the URLs because they keep recycling them. This, you can tell all the fonts, all this stuff here, they always put a slashed out price and then they put like their sell price on here all the time. And the same cart, everything's the same. It's the same scammers. This is where I think I did a video a while back on that dash cam. It looked like the one I had, maybe an upgrade. So I ordered it. It was cheap. It took like 6 weeks or something. Probably come straight from China. And it was the downgraded version of what I had. Didn't have the back, the second camera to plug in or anything, kind of. So I expected as much. But anyway, check this out. Who here's seen or knows what a spinning swage or spin swage is? The brand I have is just called Spin Swage. You guys heard about it, where you put it in the drill and you run that sucker, and the one I have goes up to like 7/8 copper, which is really hard to do. A lot of times I'll actually heat the copper up with a torch lightly before I use it. So troubleshooting. I did go to a Daikin class about 2 years ago, maybe 3 years ago. And then it was a little gap between the class and actually using that service tool, so that was cool. But anyway, Joe, yeah, the spin swage is awesome. So this comes up, and this is like the copper pipe expander, pipe swaging tool for air conditioner refrigeration. I don't know what kind of copper they're using, but it's got to be some really thin stuff. And they have like a little video clip right here. You guys might be able to see. Oops. Oh, I went too far with making it bigger. Anyway, it shows them right here using the tool, and they're just kind of squeezing it like they're squeezing pliers and just doing a quick twist. If you look carefully, you can see that the tube is already swaged out. They're not even expanding it. They're just sticking in there pretending to do it. That's just how crappy this ad is. But yeah, so you can see here it just expands a little bit. I mean, hopefully no refrigeration guys buy that, but they show it, swaged and everything. Dude, spinning or swaging this refrigeration copper is not easy, especially if you get the heavy-duty mechanical stuff, man, or whatever it is. It's a bitch. So you have to heat the pipe before it'll even be malleable and get that spin swage even go down in there, especially when you get above 3/8. 3/8 is pretty easy. 5/16 quarter is pretty easy, but once you start getting the half, 5/8 starting to get there. But when you get 3/4, 7/8, it's a bitch with the spinning swage. So yeah, this little piece of junk for $29.79 ain't gonna do crap. There's no way that thing's gonna swage the pipe. But thought that'd be funny. It is a garbage tool. So close that out. That is this junk. So gotta give myself a drink here. So for a pot opener, this is what I had up here in my hiding spot. This is a AR-15 service tool that I bought years ago for my AR-15, and it has the part to undo, the different fittings on there and everything, the barrel and everything. But right here it says beer. I don't drink beer, but that's what this is, a bottle opener. So it kind of goes on like that. That's good. This thing is seriously heavy. It is like steel, man. It weighs probably like 3 pounds. It's heavy. Okay. So spinning swage is cool. Before I had the spin swage, I had those ones that you hammered in. You would use the flaring block from the flaring tool to hold the pipe about an inch or so down below where you're going to swage, and then you'd have to hold on to that with all your might. You put the spinning, or put the swage tool, which looks like a chisel thing, down in the pipe, and then you'd have to hammer it, and that's how you did those. So anyway, let's do some show and tell. So basically, I showed up to a cooling tower the other day. Actually, take it back. The guy called me for a water source heat pump down. But then as soon as I got in, he goes, yeah, I think I might have a couple other ones to show you. But as soon as I get on the first one, and I use my testos to measure the pipe, and I like to record before and after if I have to clear like a strain or something. And the guy likes that. I mean, he thinks that's so cool that I can show him the temperatures. But a lot of times you just put your hand on there. You know what 80 degrees feels like versus like 100. So you put your hand on there, usually you get a little bit of warm pipe as the leaving water from the water source heat pump. If it's feeling like a hot shower, then you know the strainer's probably plugged or you got low water flow or something. So anyway, when you feel warm going into the water source heat pump, there's a problem. So I go, hey, yeah, I could already tell that something's going on down the towers there. So let's go take a look. And this is an antique climate control by Schneider General. These gauges must be awesome because they still work and they're accurate. They don't make stuff like this anymore. But yeah, the water temperature was at that time like, and I think it was like still morning still. So it was like 90, let's see, here's 95. So it's like almost 94. And then the outdoor temperature was like approaching 100. So here's basically video clips, basically, you know, before and after. So
on the other tower, got the fan off, just the pump running, and it's just trickling some water down.
Trying to mute that. Okay. So yeah, the water, hardly any water. That should be like a freaking shower. When I take these covers off, it should be like raining out at me, especially if the fan is on. So yeah, so you could tell that one was kind of like plugged there. And so this is the part I hate, man, is reaching down in the mucky water, grabbing the strainers, you know. Guys that do cooling towers, you know all about this stuff. But this is what I do. Look at that. Look at that strainer. Do you guys think any water's getting through that? That thing is freaking absolutely plugged. Just totally plugged. And this brand of cooling tower, they use like this small strainer, and then it's only got like holes on one side. You'll see what it looks like when I clean it off. So, you know, this is kind of like just shoot that stuff off the monsoon season, and they got trees right above it, so it just gets all nasty, you know, and you just got to blow all that stuff off. Looking at the chat over there, an R290 system, what is that? It's a 513A. I'm not familiar with either one. So I think this is when I'm just going to fire up the pump. What's pump? It'll start ripping, man. It's start getting a lot of good water in there. So, yeah. I think that was the last video that stashed. But,
coming down now.
Open up with a different amp for some reason. But yeah, water's come. You could just see the needle just dropping. Look at that. That's awesome. Sometimes analog's pretty cool to look at. You know, we're also used to digital. But, man, the quality of those analog gauges on that Schneider General is just awesome. I think the system's from like 80s. Man, it's still kind of working. We got a little still image here when it was done. Back down, getting 85. It's about down to 83. So, system was definitely a little more happy at that point. Hey, what's up? D-Breeze and HVACR with S. I don't know how your name was supposed to be pronounced there. ZSA. Is the Z silent? It's like S or something. I don't know. So, Frederick unit. More shakes than In-N-Out Burger. So, show you the leaks I found. So, and you guys could see here, man. like these Frederick units, there's your inverter heatsink. This is the backside of control panel, and I'm just like flipping it down. I'm unsnapping all the wire looms. I have these little snaps that go into these little holes right here. I'm just undoing them so it gives slack, and then I can flip this sucker down. Get to the components in here. You got electron expansion valve up there, outside air fan right here, reverser valve, and then right here is this compressor discharge line, man. And I had 2 back-to-back rooms. This place hasn't opened yet. So I don't want to bash Frederick yet because they're real awesome people to work with, and you can see there's a lot of technology, which is actually, you know, in these units. It looks, you know, makes you kind of marvel about it. You know, it's like, but they got some quirks. So I know some people were saying they had a lot of issues with them too. So I mean, when they install a ton of them, we're going to see stuff, you know, going on, and they're installing, you know, like, I don't know, there's probably 100 of these at a time in one building, so of course, you know, we get these issues. But we've noticing that I had like 2 of them right here, back-to-back units that had cracked. Look at this, right? I know it focuses pretty good at some point. There we go. Look at that crack on that copper. You guys see that right there? That's coming out pretty good. So, copper line cracked all the way around right here. That didn't hold any refrigerant. So 2 of them had a code 14, I believe it is, for like no pressure. And looking at this one earlier, or yesterday, look at that. This is with it running. Maybe I'll give you some. I'm gonna give you guys some audio on this one. This is what's going on with this thing here, man. This is why those lines are cracked. Oh. Look at that sucker.
That's probably why these are all cracking up here at top of the compressor too.
Look at that shake, man. That shake right there. That's awesome, huh? So yeah, that there might be another video here. That was it. So this is and this is just a picture of that crack. The copper seems pretty thin there, huh? So yeah. So more shakes than In-N-Out burger. Or how about if you guys don't have In-N-Out, you guys got a Freddy's steak burger? I like Freddy's steak burger better. It might be blasphemy to some, but I actually like the French fries better at Freddy's steak burgers, and I like the hamburger better. This is awesome. So Goodman blows its load. I think I put up a video about this already. Was up in Payson the other day, and I put in a disconnect. The guy said, "Yes, like just making a loud hum and tripping the breaker." So I plug it in. I go, "Huh," and then I bump it in. I gotta have me put the disconnect in again. Boom! And I wish I would have been ready and knowing that was going to happen. I had to cover off. This thing just unloaded and like shot. It looked like it was pumping gear oil out of this sucker, man. It was just jizzing out all over down to the bottom of it. So yeah, you can see it's a Bristol. And this is Payson. Now Payson, you know, some of the guys will defend Goodman units. Now here's the thing, like with Payson, you know, versus like down here in the desert. Down here we have heat pumps, so you have a bunch of components in here that these straight coolants don't. Then there's no reversing valve out here. There's none of those little thin capillary tubes, distributor, and the unit just only runs, you know, for cooling only, not for heating. So up at Payson, when we install these cheap-ass Goodman units, the furnace part seems to always work pretty okay, other than rattling sometimes. But the AC part doesn't run anything as hard because it's higher altitude up there. And it's cooler, and hardly ever use heat pumps up there. So the Goodman condenser can last 20 years up there. So this one was about that. Serial number 16700. So I think it's a 2000 Bristol. It still goes bah. So yeah, it let out all the oil through the deal there. Yeah. Kind of seeing what you guys got going in there. Yeah, you know, with the subscribers, I see drives talking about almost up to 10K subscribers. So I made this channel like '08 or something like that, and I was using it a lot at first. And I actually had well over 5,000 subscribers pretty quick. I think I actually had like 8. And then I kind of went to this in-house job or whatever for a while. And I kind of really didn't do anything with this for like a year or two, a couple years. Then it really dropped down. And then I started putting a little bit of stuff where I was at for a while. But then, you know, I've been putting some stuff on there. And then lately I've been like giving this channel a lot more attention. So it seems to be stepping it up a little bit. So I put up this picture yesterday in my feed, on the community feed, and lonely Aeon unit down there, and it is down in Biltmore, somebody asked the other day. So all little big buildings around there. This is up on a roof, you know, but not very high up. And that unit, I just had to check the programming and stuff. So the funny thing is this right here. So they give me this Aeon service tool, and these stupid things, both of them, this was like newer one that we got like last year. It takes this, I don't know, the first one kind of would run off of like a built-in battery or something for a little bit before it go dead, but this newer one, quote unquote, it doesn't. It doesn't like hold a charge or whatever. I almost have to have this thing plugged in all the time. So I've always had to have 120 volt power around me. When you're working on 480 volt units like this and there's no nearby electrical service outlet, I'd have to go get a long extension cord and whatnot. And I've been meaning to do this, so finally yesterday, man, I'm like, forget this. I brought up my little extreme, you know, little cell phone charger, 10,000 milliamp cell phone charger as the USB plugs. I took an extra micro USB cable and just cut it. And luckily it didn't have these little tiny crappy strand wires. It had good wires in there. I was able to easily strip the wires back. And for now, I need to do the heat shrink to it and solder it. But right now I just used a wire nut and something else just to connect it. Whatever I had in that bucket up on the roof. And I connected. I got the polarity and then I connected it to this. And now I won't need this stupid 120 volt, you know, power supply no more. Just cut it off, and I'm going to use this now. And this thing will probably run that all day. This is just an LCD thing and everything. But the other thing I hate about these is they go to sleep. If you don't touch any buttons after like a minute or two, it always shuts off, and you have to turn it on, reconnect it, go back into like what your it has status, which is where you look for like all your temperatures, everything, set points. Like if you're going to go in there and change what the supplier is programmed for, because like these kind of units set up for like this kind of stuff, a lot of times it'd be like, all right, I just enabled cooling, and now it just does a target supplier, and it will cycle the compressor duty cycle. They have an unloader usually, and do that to make a stable supplier. You know, shoot for 55 usually, just depends. So you have all your other stuff overrides. I could like balance test. I could turn on each relay from the Wattmaster board from this right here, so that's pretty cool. Yeah. Check the comments over here. Yep. Worse Chihuahua in the winter morning. Better than Five Guys. Yeah, my family might like Five Guys, and they like that other place where you get to make your own sandwich. Can't think of what that place is, but man, Freddy's Steak Burger. They have these awesome like steak burgers, and I don't know, it just looks like it's homemade. And they got the sliced long ways, pickles on them, and you know, rings of onions. It's just good, and they have the shoestring fries also, but they have a seasoning on it. It's just, I don't know. The In-N-Out fries are just blah, like actually eating shoestrings to me. I've never been that big of a fan of the In-N-Out French fries. I actually prefer the McDonald's ones, but my family likes the In-N-Out burger fries. But anyway, Freddy's fries are good, and they got seasoning on them. They're awesome. And Freddy's, and this is why I was going to them earlier, and I forgot. We were talking about the shakes, but Freddy's, it's called Freddy's Steak Burgers and Custard, because they have all these like specialty shakes and ice cream sandwiches and all this stuff there. Of course, the kids like that place because of that too. So yeah. Stay Bright 8. Stay Bright. You're talking about copper cleaner? Is that like the white paste? There, Brandon. Is that what you're talking about? The white paste that you put on copper before you torch it. I have some Stay Bright. I don't know which one it is. I use it sometimes. Regular copper to copper, I don't even think I'm really needing to grab it, but when I have those tinned connections on some of the bigger compressors, I use that Stay Bright then. Seems like it gets my weld better the first time. Yeah, the algorithm. Yeah, there's definitely YouTube pushes what they want to push. Sometimes it's just absolute filth and stuff. I'm like, damn, I can see that. Some racket going on outside the door there. Daughter feeding the cat. So here's a little adventure. I showed you guys one of the photos here yesterday or whatever it was. 132 degrees where I was working in the shade. You see that's shaded by my umbrella. That's because this unit here, it's not as close as it looks. It was like 3 foot, 40 inches or so. But it was just blowing its hot air right on it. So it's no wonder that I had this fault on this Mitsubishi. So you got the red light lighted steady and the yellow light blinking twice. Outdoor power system abnormality. So when it just says IC411 or IC501 on outdoor power board is faulty compressor, or compressor is faulty. So what you do usually is you unplug the compressor from the circuit board and then you turn it on, and then you just put your voltmeter in there. So if you see anything coming out, it's like a VFD, kind of like you just check that. And I didn't get nothing, and it still went right into that fault. So the board was bad. Compressor ohmed out and everything okay. Here's that circuit board. I already had another one of these. So show you guys a little. So this is the control board in like a Mitsubishi. Some of you guys have seen this. I took pictures just to remember which plugs had something in and which didn't, because especially since it was like 4 days or something since I took the parts out and then I went back with the boards. I kind of look at my pictures and I go, okay, there was nothing plugged into these, but there is here and then up there at the top. So your power board, this board's your control board. It gets power from the other boards. So I think that this is the AC input, I think. No, it might be something down below. But it does have an AC and a DC input. Oh, here it is. So you got your, this is your AC input, I believe. Connector AC, which goes to the other board. Yeah, no, it is. This is your AC input. And then over here is the DC input, because this goes up to the fuse and feeds that outdoor fan motor. Starting to kind of remember. Here's I want to get one of these out of one of these boards. Now I have this board. It just has a bad IGBT on it. I actually took it home. I'm going to try using them to test filtering the DC to send to my unit. But I want to get one of these reactors or whatever they are right here. And so this does come off the board, goes through this, and goes back into the board. Right where all these capacitors and stuff are. So, but it doesn't. It's not like a switching one that's changing the voltage like on that Frederick. It's still just the 208 volt AC, so I'm getting just under 300 volts DC. So I don't think it regulates really. Oh, it must do a little bit, because I found out that one of these chips actually is in line with over here, this one with the diodes, and then this one's running the compressor. These 3 wires are to the compressor, and then you got, here's that choke, or what do you call it, that deal, you know, reactor or whatever it's called that goes in there. So it does do something electronically to condition the power, but it doesn't seem to be stepping it up, anything like that. Here was a picture I took just to remember what was where with that reactor. I was kind of glad, because like a week later, it's like, okay, 2 wires here, 2 wires there. Compressor output again right here. Compressor IGBT. And there's another IGBT, it looks like, but it's used to like somehow go between the reactor and the capacitor, some sort of electronic control. That was a picture there. Okay. Video. So, but anyway, make sure my audio's still off, but yeah, this was it. So here's the old board. Get this laid out here. Yeah. I was actually made a video about this, but I'll just talk about it now. What are you looking for? Is inductor? Well, I mean, they're all inductors, I guess. But I mean, inductors could do multiple. But I mean, but in the like VFDs and stuff, they call that in between the DC. They call it a reactor or something. What they call what it's doing. But yeah, it's an inductor. Like all of these, this is an inductor. This is an inductor. You know, coil chokes and transformers or all different sorts of inductors. Yeah. So the power comes into these 2 terminals right here. You guys see that? These 2 terminals, AC power, and then it goes over right here into through the filters here, and it goes through this filter here and then into this transformer. I'm pretty sure just sets up the low voltage for all the controls. The AC power continues through here. It looks like this is a current sensor, CT1. I'm going to bust one of these off, but I'm pretty sure it's a current sensor. Is how that this thing knows that there's current going through it. Through another filter, through a relay. And then it goes over here, and here's the interesting thing, and I got it close up over here. It's very interesting. Okay, I don't know if anybody's used full wave rectifiers, but you have you usually put like one line here and one line here from your high voltage, be it 115 or 230. This is like 208. You would put one line here and one line here, and then you got 4 diodes built in here, and then it rectifies your minus and your plus for your DC output. Mitsubishi's using 2 of these, and it works the way they do it, but it's just never the way I've ever wired it. But I actually have my own system wired this way now. But it's got the line going to both of these, and then the other line of the 208 going to both of these. It still goes through and works. It's like check diodes is check, like think of check valves, diodes. Still works the same way. It's just interesting how they did it. And they just use 2 of these. It uses more diodes and beefs it up. I just never seen it tell this Mitsubishi if somebody use both of these terminals soldered together for one line and then both of these the other way, and it still flows and checks through both. Kind of very interesting. Yeah. So, and like I said, it kind of comes out. It kind of goes out some these 2 wires and these 2 wires. It somehow, is it those 2 wires? Yeah, the reactor's hooked up to these 2. Okay, yeah, plus. Yeah, right here, plus. One of them's plus at least, and one might be the negative. I don't know, but it goes through these 2 and then goes back and hits these 2, and then this, you can see they're kind of wired to this chip here, the IGBT chip or whatever. And then that output goes over to the plus of the freaking capacitors. It's crazy what they're doing, but I guess it works. I think they're conditioning. So there is some sort of conditioning of the power on these boards. So I'm going to try hooking one up. I have this board here, right here at home, and what's wrong with it is this is probably fried. As long as this part ain't fried. Well, I know it's not because it has voltage. It had the 300 volts. CT1 equals current transformer. Yeah, I think pretty sure it's just a reading the current, so it knows what's going through the power there into this section. So yeah, so this chip has to be working because I still have the voltage here. But I need a reactor or whatever it's called that goes between these pins maybe to really use it here. I have another one of these boards, but I actually already ripped off all these right here, and I took the capacitors off. I'll show you. You'll recognize these 2 rectifiers and these capacitors in a minute from another board. So there's where I had 130 something degrees as I was working. I'm like, holy shit. So, yeah, and then of course, you'll see there it is. I cleaned off that heat sink real good, basically, and all that stuff. And put on the. I started turning that. That wasn't enough. It was still freaking 120 something. I laid that thermometer up there. I'm like, damn, 126 still. Sucked. What am I working on tonight? Just showing Breezy, if you came in late. I'm showing a bunch of different things that I just have in some folders. Some show and tell. So yesterday I changed the circuit board, power board, inverter board, whatever you want to call it, in Mitsubishi. So yeah, I still had 126 degrees right here going into that. So no doubt, guys, that's what fried that compressor board. Like 130, 120 something, So you'll see later. I went over to the other unit behind it, and it's like 122. I'm like, well, because it's hot up there. We still got a lot of reflective heat from the white and everything. So that's what I work in, guys. Over 120 degrees at best. So I went over to the other ones. After a little bit, it was down to like 116, 117 right there, 118. Yeah. So I did have that unit working at that point, and then somewhere. Yeah, right there. Look, I turned it. It wasn't enough. It's still 125, 126 degrees there. And then I finally got really pissed at that unit. Hopefully I didn't stress those lines, but it just kind of straightened them out. But I turned it. I did. This is at 4:30, 5 o'clock yesterday. Yeah, it was a little bit after 4, I think, actually. And those guys need to get out of there, the maintenance guys, so I needed to get done. So now I dropped it down to whatever I was getting on the roof, 121 to 122. By the way, I lost that thermometer, so I'm kind of upset about that. I found that thermometer, and now I lost it. So, yeah. So I just kind of twisted this. It just made a 90 degree with the copper here, so it kind of just straightened out a little bit. I couldn't quite turn it straight. I wasn't in the time or mood to go get a saw. I just did this because I couldn't leave it that way. It was just ridiculous. So I turned that unit. You can see how a lot of the units, most of them are laid out pretty good. These are got their back to back, so they're not blowing into each other. These ones are all staggered. That's all great. That one system there, though, just had the one blowing right into the back of the other. It should have been turned the other way. So, Yeah. So no doubt that contributed to why that sucker fried and met its maker. So I thought I put that picture in here. No. All right, let's go over to my rectifier. You're working on 3 city multis. Yeah, I do remember you saying that you were working on city multis. They got flooded out, huh? Man. So did you just replace all those city multis, or did somebody insist you try to figure out each circuit board that was bad and replace it? You don't see me drinking that. Anyway, okay, this is my house. This is my experiment still in the works. This is what's cooling me upstairs in my house right now. And everything's good up here. You know, it's 76. I run it cooler than I used to, and it's a ton smaller. Went from a 4 to a 3. Here's my AC power that existed. This is that DC power I added, and I added this box in between because I basically took the AC power off the VFD I put in here, and I'm running the AC over to here into this rectifier, and then that rectifier goes and ties into the DC here. So I'm taking, because I remember I was only putting a single phase into a 3-phase VFD. I was worried about Fry and the rectifiers in it, and I don't want to have to rip that VFD out that I sealed really nice into that unit. So, but when I had this cover on, I went over and pulled the cover off and stuck this bead thermometer. Look at that, 218 degrees. It was my heatsink temperature, so it runs in the hundreds now because I actually put some fans in it. So this is it right now. It looks kind of like hell, but it works. So what I have here is actually taped I put a mushroom fan in here, and it fits. I've screwed it. It's actually really nice, but I just took some plastic I already had that had an opening at the bottom. I just sealed it up. It was going to rain that day, I thought, so I did this in a hurry. And then here's the exhaust that blows out, so the rain can't get in, but the air pulls in here and it blows out here. And you know what? I've opened that up after work, put my hand in there, and it doesn't burn my hand anymore. But you know, before when it was like this, I put my hand on these fins. It was hot as shite. So yeah. I thought I had the picture in here. Show you guys the inside. Oh yeah, blur. So just on that one. So remember I was saying recognize those capacitors and those 2 bridge rectifiers. Here they are, and I have it wired the same way. I put these 2 bridge rectifiers out of another one of those Mitsubishi boards right here. It's got heat paste, heat sink. I drilled and tapped and screwed it on there real nice. Soldered on some male plugs so that way I could quickly just take my AC power. AC power comes in here, and then I have just the leads plugged in and plug stabs in each one of those. And then I got plus going here, minus going here, and then I got the high voltage DC from these 3 capacitors that I JB welded at the bottom of the box there real nice. It goes and comes out and goes over to that conduit into that next box that you guys saw there. So yep. And reading some messages there. KW's insurance paid. Sump pump failed. Oh, okay. Some stuff that's down underwater, huh? That sounded like a lot of fun. So I already had a video of this, but some people were asking me that just kind of started watching my channel after I started the VFD project with that Linux unit you just saw. The reason I did that VFD is because I have the VFDs already. I have like 6 of them. And I've used 2 of them. This is where I used the first one on this one right here. This is in my garage. But basically, these will accept single phase. But the other thing is I can also put DC into them. And since I bought used solar panels with the stimulus check, I put up 22 solar panels and I feed them into that unit out on my new unit for my upstairs in my house. And it carries a lot of the current when the sun comes up. I got to like lower the power coming from the utility to get it to draw more from the solar. So it's still work in progress. Right now it's like 50-50. When the sun comes up, it's like 50% of the power is pulling off of the solar. AMD heatsink. Dude, that's not only the AMD heatsink. The AMD cooling fan is also now cooling it as well. I believe that's an AMD fan. Or I might have put another fan in there. I pulled the fan off. So, but yeah. Yeah, so that's what's out there. So this thing here is my this is a water source heat pump that I've had for a while, and I changed that. And I put I pulled out the 310 compressor and put a 210. It was a 460 volt water source heat pump anyway, so I put a ECM that runs on 230 in here, and then I put a 230 volt 3-phase compressor in there, and I got the VFD. So I have single phase power coming in here and then 3-phase going out. And you see right here it's running 35 hertz. Now that it's 100 degrees in my garage, I have to run a compressor. It's a recip compressor. It runs really slow to keep the head pressure where at normal range. So it actually still kicks ass. It draws half the power than the heat strip did in the water heater, and it heats up faster, and it blows out cool air right here, like 20, 25 degree temp split. So if it's 100 in my garage, it's blowing out like 75, I think, and stuff like that. It's pretty cool. So, and it actually will drop the garage if people use enough hot water to make it run a little bit. It will start cooling the garage. So yeah, so I've had this VFD running for 3 or 4 months at least before summer started. So yeah, and you just have a couple relays on my homemade controller. Just brings in to bring in, turn it on, and then I have another one for high speed and low speed. So it goes to 40 hertz until the leaving water temperature goes over 130, and then it drops to 35 hertz. And on the side, I have my water heater over there, and I have a circulating pump over there. And here's my homemade electronics that I made, and there's my LCD on there. So it says temperature is 129, leaving water temperature 126, and the temperature set point was 126, but I have a differential, so I think it cuts out right around 130-ish or so. And then when it gets to 126, I think is when it kicks on. So yeah. And remember, this is like my little daughter board. I have a couple SCRs, silicon control relays. Those are what power your contactors. And then on this board, I have a microchip, microprocessor, and then these are optical oscillators with triac output. So basically, these interface from your 5 volts are like you're just basically like biasing a diode basically to the input, and then the output switches 24 volts between here and here. So and then these actually have can pull the handle the current of your contactor or your relays. And actually now I'm not even using a big relay, so it would have been close, but these little chips might almost have powered those little cube relays. But I didn't want to try it, so. And then here also is my little buttons for changing set points and everything. So pretty cool little project. It's been there for a while. I still have my little papers stuck up here on a magnet that show the wiring and how to adjust the speeds on an ECM without having a circuit board. It's just putting DC and everything into the inputs. So, what's up, Roy? Kind of joined a little late. Let's see other comments. Any tips to power EMC blower motors without module? I haven't done that yet, and you can't run it off a VFD because the VFDs are for AC, and they send a positive, pseudo-positive current wave and then a negative one. Your ECM motors are actually strictly DC, and I think it's the same polarity all the time. It has a permanent magnet, and then it's just like a stepper motor. It's just pulsing one, and it's doing whatever rotation each would be. It's real efficient, but it's got a permanent magnet, and it's just pulsing it with the module from a DC bus. Also, I did take the module, instead of sticking AC power, I stuck DC power right into the high voltage inputs, which just go through the diodes, and it doesn't matter, you can't even hook it up backwards. It'll charge up the capacitors. But I ran those ECMs, like 2 of them, off of solar power already, and I just take like a 9-volt battery or something and just stick it right on the control wiring to tell it to run with some speed or something. So that was kind of cool. So yeah, there's no 3-phase from. Oh, you're talking about power ECM motor without module. Yeah, so yeah, that won't power without the module. You'll have to have something, unless you built your own circuit. But I took a class on those when those first came out in the late 90s, and I thought at first they were just probably using tracks or something weird and stupid like for a speed controller, and then it blew my mind when I saw what they were doing. And how they said they told you, like, there's no, like, you normally get the slip and everything on the normal AC motor because you got a magnetic field always turning in a rotation. Then you have the armature turning with some slip, so it always lags behind it. But they said one reason these are so efficient is because it's DC, but it actually, they said when it's powering a winding, The unused windings are used as sensors, and it like makes a current spike when it moves across. It knows its relationship, its position. So they said it like puts a position current right to each winding as it's in the perfect relationship for the most efficient transfer or whatever. So that's why you see an ECM bounce a couple times and rock before it gets going, because they just said it randomly pulses it, lets it jiggle, and then once it does that, it knows where it is and it stops, and then it starts up with the right in sync. It's pretty cool. It's a lot to those things, and then they've revised them over the years. But they're definitely, when you pull them back to like 50% speed, they use like a fraction of the power, not 50% of the power, but it's like a quarter of the power that it did. I know on my blower up here, it pulls like 2 point something amps on high, but when I drop it to like 50% for first stage, it drops under an amp. It's like 7/10 or something. It's pretty awesome. Did I learn to do stuff like this through years of trade? Actually, I went to electronics school when I was really young, and I was always into electronics. But then I kind of like moved back to pacing like a dodo and did nothing for a while, and then fell into HVAC. So electronics was my first thing, and I never went to school for HVAC, but learned the HVAC as I went, and then of course going to classes, that the companies send you to and stuff like that. But I never went to HVAC school, none of that. So this is a random thing. The sun was really run the sun was very red the last couple mornings. This was like yesterday. That sucker, man, look at that. It was like pretty crazy looking. And then it was red today. This was today through the clouds. It looked like a planet. It almost looked like looking at Jupiter or something. But that's our sun, man. It looked pretty freaking bitchin' right there. Yeah, the ECM, it saves power even on high speed just from the efficiency, and like I said, don't have the slip and all that other kind of stuff. But it when you can back it off at full speed is where it really saves you. And the other thing about regular motors, they have they're designed for like the load, and then when you kind of deviate from them, their power factor and everything is like way off. So like using we had like some air handlers at that facility I was at, and then some of them were just in like our certain rooms that had no duct on them, but they'd be like 3 horsepower blower motors just blowing out into the free air. So it really could have put like a half horse motor or something in there and blown the same amount of CFMs we needed, because there was no static and no duct. But because they had like the 3 horse or whatever, the power factor was way off. And we actually put our meter on, and we like 10 amps. And then we put these power factor correcting capacitors on there, 3-phase, regular motors. And it dropped to like 3 amps. So now they do say, when you read that power, power, there's pair power, reactive power, whatever. So it goes back into the grid from a utility company, and then it comes back again. It's basically recharging you got it takes so much current to charge up the flux or whatever, and then you have so much that's actually going into doing the work. So I guess when you have like a gross mismatch, like say a motor that's way too big for what the work is that you're doing, that power factor goes to shite. And that's when those power factor capacitors come in handy. So they say you don't usually get charged for that. So even though you might power factor correct it with capacitors, they say depending on how you charge by utility company, they don't charge for the reactive power because it's just go back into the grid anyway. I don't know. And then but what it frees up is it definitely frees up all that strain. Like it does go from 10 amps down to 3, and plus, say if you had a big motor starter panel and you put power factor corrector capacitors on a whole bunch of motors, and you were previously capped out, I guess, on what that overall, panels could do, and you want to add like another motor, but you couldn't. If you went and put power factor capacitors, correction or whatever, on all but your motors, and all of a sudden you freed up like 50 amps, now you could go put another motor on that same panel without, an upgrade or having it overloading it. So it's pretty cool. So electronics is definitely fun. I don't obsess on anything, so I never like master anything. I don't like, I have all these different hobbies, and I work on a little bit and then let it sit. It's bad. I'm bad about that. So I'm not an obsessive guy. Everybody that's really good at singing or really good at guitar, or and some people that are just like those freaks that you see, like you're like, wow, the singing range, and they're only like 20 years old. Those are the people that were just obsessed. They were the biggest dorks when they were like 13, and they didn't like have a variety of things and a bunch of friends. They were themselves looking themselves in the mirror singing, and that's why they're so good now. You know, they took one thing they really liked and they put all their effort into it. You know, which sometimes that's okay for certain things. You know, and some people just put all their effort into watching anime or playing video games, and that's why our country's kind of the way it is right now. I mean, we were just talking about it earlier. You know, people a lot of times ask me about working for them and stuff, and someone said something, but it's like, you know, it's like we talk about. I go, you know, I'll tell you, just the last year or two, it's been hard for me to think of anybody to bring over to where I work, because it's like it's going at the field. I don't know about where you guys live, but it's just like young men and boys that were in high school, they're not like going out there and learning trades. They don't have the interest in it. And a lot of them, there's like this growing field of like call centers, and there's way too many young men that are working in these call centers, you know, be it for Amazon or for whatever that's for, or for financial places, you know. It's just like people are getting into that, and it is a dead-end job, so then they hate it, but that's what they do. They don't want to go out and work outside. They don't want to become an electrician or a plumber or an HVAC guy. And it's actually starting to get a little dry out there for finding techs and the next people coming up, you know, mechanics, stuff like that. But then within the little bit, there's always your little bit. There's a little niche where people are like, some kids grow up, they're really into it, like the people, you know, like modifying cars or something, you know, that are just all in. But it's not like when I was a kid, we all tore apart our bicycles at 8 years old, from the down to the bearings, and greased them and used to put them back just for the fun of it. And I'm not kidding. 7, 8 years old, our bikes, we would tear them down. We would wipe all the grease off all the bearings. We would repack our bearings, you know. And it didn't hurt that I had, you know, grandpa and uncle and everybody, you know, was always did their own mechanic stuff and electrical stuff and everything. But we did that. We packed our own bearings. I would torque them and just right on our cranks and on our wheels and everything. But nowadays, it's unheard of to see, you know, your typical boy even ride a bike, let alone be able to take one apart, you know, change a tire on a car once they start driving. Heck, you know, when we were kids, I was 16, you couldn't wait. You got your driver's license on your 16th birthday. Dude, these kids are going into their 20s without even getting a driver's license now, because they're just not that interested. Their whole persona and life is just on the internet, and they're just watching anime and playing video games. It's really... It's not only pathetic. It's a big circle. It's going to come back and bite the country in the ass, I'm afraid, just because, like I said, there's not enough people coming up in the ranks to kind of continue what we're doing, you know. So one last folder here, and then I probably better call it quit. It's almost 9, but worked on some coolers today. I didn't take any other pictures, but this whole rooftop. This guy's really cool, by the way. You know, the maintenance guys over this place. But I was looking at some facility here, but this is kind of how bad the water could be, and just when the enamel rots. All these coolers are just like, I told the guy, if I even touch this with my finger, it's just going to go right through the side. You can see right here, you can see right through the cooler right here, see right in there where the water is. And then the floats, you can see somebody try to fix it. They took a float bracket, screwed it to the outside to hold the float, because that's where the float used to be, and that whole area right there is just rusted out. It's just gone. So yeah, gone. And then I fixed this other cooler for these guys. This one is actually only a year old. Actually, custom build coils, evap section, and then kind of just like it pulls through here, and then there's a burner section, and then your fan section, and then the motor's kind of tucked into this doghouse looking thing, and then went down there into a paint booth to spray paint cars. So yeah, pretty interesting. So anyway, yeah, so I just put all that stuff in a temporary folder just for show and tell. I thought it might be kind of interesting to start doing some live streams instead of making a video for each one of these. Some of these deserve their own videos still, of course, sometimes, but I thought maybe some of the stuff. I take a lot of pictures and stuff that never makes it, you know, on a YouTube or anything. Plus, we can talk about this stuff. I still got to get a little better at, you know, interfacing back and forth with the chat and with those, and with, you know, keeping the continuity and the flow going. But check the last couple comments before I call it. Lots of EMC motors taken out there is fine, just bad module. Yeah, hold on. I mean, I might even have some of it, but let me think if I have it. EMC motors, go to the wall. Oh, shit. some of these photos are very old. You know, I've always liked taking pictures. See 2005, you know, with the Kodak before we had smartphones. Classic. I don't know what's on here, but Goodman Country. This is where I am. Oh, this will be another live stream, guys. We'll go through this. This is right here. I just remembered this will make a good live stream. This is all Goodman stuff, almost all. Oh, with some EMC. Is that E? Nope, that's regular motor. But I know I started taking apart ECMs back in these days. This is like also probably 2005, 2004. I was taking the motors apart. That's not an ECM, but I was taking them apart a while back. I don't know if I'm going to find the videos. As I find these, I need to start like labeling them and everything, because for a while there was a thing going on with the ECMs just like frying a lot, like in train and everything. And they were putting in, and then they were saying, and that's when we used to just put modules on them at first, and almost 99% of the time you'd be fine. But then we had a bad rash that was just frying the new modules usually within days, and then so they would say, new rule, just change everything. And we would keep some modules, but I'm like, man, this is a shame. But I started ohming them out and checking my, well, there's an imbalance. So I popped the back cover off, and you could see it's not where the windings are down wound tight, it's at the very end, right behind the bell cover, where the windings come loose and then come back over and they crisscrossed. They would touch like copper pipes, and they would just rub the varnish, and all you had to do was separate them. Just separate them. The short went away. You know, it's fine. Don't forget the old variable speed train. Train had full VRF units in this is 2005, and this unit was old. Look how old it was in 2005. And it came out with these in the 90s. Power conditioning board, control board, whatever it was, power conditioners, and might have been power factor. I don't know what it was. And then it went over to the inverter, and it drove a 3-phase compressor back in the 90s, buddy. Here's a close-up of that. Good thing I had a Kodak back then to get some okay pictures. Yeah. So here's your power, your chokes and filters and everything. The power went through that board, and then it went over to the driver board here, and there's your 3 outputs, MOSFETs or whatever, right on there. Usually I think it takes like 6 MOSFETs, but there's the old school IGBTs, man, driving, and just right there, and the liquid line went behind this heatsink and cooled that heatsink with liquid, which will be like 120 to 130 degrees in the summer. All right, another picture of it here. And what happened here is the DSC, this hacker company, they would go and do slap stuff in without caring, and so they took out this is the original furnace here that went to that variable speed, and they had the old square module on it. This ECM motor didn't just have steps, it truly ramped up from just a crawl up to 100%, and so did the compressor. Yes, Joe, way ahead of its time. And they changed it out to this one and just hooked up a couple wires just so the fan would just run on like the green wire off of the interface, and then left, and it never worked right and froze up and everything. Well, because this had this intermediate controller up here that everything tied to. So you had your thermostat, and then you had your indoor and outdoor unit tied to this. And I noticed they had like a 0 to 5 volts coming out. I made this circuit board right here. Because the controller for the thermostat, this was the thermostat, and it ramped up. See how it says percentage? And the bar graph went all up to right here. Bar graph up and down. Integrated control system, comfort system, train, 100% variable speed. And so it varied. And so this interface board sent out like the command to the furnace to run the speed of the blower, and then to the outdoor unit for it to run its speed. Well, they put that wrong air handler in there, which you had your Y1 and Y2 in green. So what I did, I made this controller here. Man, it's a long time ago. But I had a voltage regulator, I think. Yes, I took the 24 volts to 5 volts, I think, or something, or what? Maybe it was 12 volts. I don't know. I just needed to run this chip. This is a comparator chip. And all I did is so I had green going right to it. Whenever it turned on, it just went to like low speed, and then I had like when I had 2 pots, and I'd set that voltage, that 0 to 5 volt voltage. I just made thresholds, so when it hit like past like 2/3 away, it brought on this relay where it's brought on like Y1 or something, and then it brought on another relay when it got to another threshold. So it pseudo gave steps to the new furnace, which wasn't compatible, and nobody had a fix to make it work. I did that, and guess what? It stopped freezing up. It wasn't perfect, but it worked. It worked, as long as I kept going out to that place. So, didn't mean to get distracted on that, but I don't know, man. Dude, this is actually, this folder I'm opening right now is really for another day. I used to have like a website, so I think that's what all that stuff is. Goodman Country Boys and Girls Club. Oh, Larry's watching. He'll know about this. He met me here on this job years, like 20 years ago almost. Oh yeah, this company I was working for, I used to go behind their installs. I was still learning on this stuff. They were adding traps and everything, but look at the color on that head. They already torched it, man. Running these things out of oil, kept hitting the reset. So found out what they did. They call it, is that they didn't put a solenoid to unload or to bypass one of the coils below when the compressor unloaded, so it wouldn't keep the velocity to keep the oil. I drilled a hole here like they said to, and I drained out like a couple gallons of oil out of this sucker. So, yep, and here's your two. So I added this. This is before I was soldering it in, I think. I was soldering in a solenoid right here. So basically, this didn't kick in until Y2 kicked in. And then this would come on. This always had flow, and then the second half of the coil would just get it when it went to Y2. So when it was unloaded, this would stop. So you 50% compressor, same velocity through the coil, be able to pull the oil out was the idea. So, yeah. Oop, I'm live streaming. Nobody coming in.
Why are you still live streaming?
Okay, anyway, it's probably time to go. I'll have to find that video clip later. There's a camera right here.
Okay.
So anyway. All right. She didn't know what she's getting in for. So I turned off the camera, turned off the audio too. Let me try that again. Oh, you guys didn't hear nothing because I turned. Yeah, I didn't notice when I hit the little invisible button or whatever from LG Cam. It's also I'm using from a mic because my headset's broken. I need to get a new one. So, but this is a Goodman unit, not a Lennox like everybody thinks. I always throw everybody when I show this to them. Goodman had a decent idea here. Take one cover off, compressor here, reversing valve right here. So easy. Controls right here. Still rattled a little bit because it's crappy metal and everything, but it was their old 3-sided unit. Copied Lennox a little bit on that. So, yep. They should have stuck to that design. I actually didn't mind those. Then they later on went to these turds, and I have several pictures of Goodman units with rocks laying on them. So that's not for decoration. That's what homeowners would do to stop them from rattling at night, keeping them up at night. It's called the Goodman Silencer System, plus, tons of folders of cracked fan blades. Within their first year, brand new. Goodman's just suck. So anyway, I got a whole folder of this stuff we could go over on another live chat. So anyway, with that, guys, better get going. So, yep. It's nighttime, so went on a little long. We'll catch you guys later, man. Hope we can